Hey everybody, I am here with Jen Walton of Short and Sweet BnB. She is the person to talk to about short-term rentals in Ottawa. It's been in the news a lot recently, obviously for both good and bad reasons, but I thought it might be helpful for some of you to hear something and hear directly from Jen, somebody that really knows what she's talking about, has her finger on the pulse, and we can ask her her thoughts on some of the issues. So Jen, maybe if you could just give everybody a real quick primer on you and your business and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we manage about 150 plus suites here in the downtown core, pretty much ranging from Westboro to Vanier. We pretty much are a full service Airbnb property management company, so cleanings, check-ins, check-outs, talking to guests, the marketing and the sales of the property. So it's pretty hassle-free for landlords.
Excellent. Okay, and maybe you can talk about what the current regulations are for short-term rentals in Ottawa.
Yeah, so currently they do need to be owner-occupied suites. However, there's no enforcement. So when we talk about regulation, we're really talking about regulation and implementation. And that seems to be the two kind of contradicting topics that we have. So right now, there are existing bylaws in place. So many people have voiced that why don't we just enforce these bylaws that are already in place. And so I think the new regulations are a little bit more restrict, but mostly focused on that implementation and enforcement of the Airbnbs.
Okay. And I guess for now, are they allowed in all types of units? Who can have an Airbnb or a short-term rental and who cannot?
That's the hard part. It's a very gray area, and that seems to be what the city is looking to implement of that side, is trying to break down where there is no gray area anymore. So more of a black and white process that they would like to put into place.
Okay. So I don't think anybody will be surprised that you're pro Airbnb.
Yes.
What are some of the points that those are opposed to Airbnb? What are they saying as far as problems that are arising?
Right.
We always hear about obviously the big blow-ups, the house parties, that kind of stuff, but what are you hearing from them?
Yeah, so we believe in something called proactive responsible hosting, which essentially means that you do well for your community, you do well for your neighbors, your guests, and your landlords. And that essentially means that you're doing proactive screening. So just like you have a long-term tenant, let's say you do reference check, criminal record check, and credit check, we do our own screening process as well on the short-term side. And a lot of the issues that you're seeing in the media right now are very isolated cases and are more of, let's say, people not doing responsible hosting or not practicing responsible hosting. So that's something we're really big on, is making sure that you properly screen your guests so you don't have issues. Because they are very few and far between. We have wonderful guests every single day, but the media doesn't, post about all the successful check-ins we had yesterday, for example. They'll only kind of pick up on those negative experiences, and it's too bad. I would say that some hosts or even just poor guests are kind of ruining the experience that's otherwise running pretty functionally, I would say.
Do you have any numbers, any idea of how many stays happen at Airbnbs or short-term rentals in Ottawa? I know we hear about always sort of 2 or 3 really bad ones every year, but is there any kind of numbers on that?
I don't know those numbers off by heart. What I can say is we host between 500 and 700 different transactions per month on the Airbnb platform, which would turn out to be somewhere, I would say, between 1,500 and about 2,200 guests, depending.
200 per month?
Per month, yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you can talk about what the city's looking to do now. I know they're reviewing the rules and they're going to be releasing some sort of update on that, yes?
Yeah. So the city will be producing a report shortly. They did have McLaren's Consulting Group go through and do kind of a study about the short-term and the long-term rental market. A lot has to do with zoning requirements, and a lot has to do with primary and secondary suites. So I guess the best way to explain it is primary suite is one that's owner occupied. So the owner physically lives in that property, and a secondary suite would be like an investment suite. Where it becomes tricky is, let's say you have a duplex and the owner lives upstairs and then you rent the basement suite on Airbnb. that seems to be kind of that muddy water of what that will be accepted or not accepted on that side. But from the majority, from what I can say right now, it probably, my gut feeling says that primary suite, so if you rent a bedroom in your home or you rent your home while on vacation, I feel like will be passed through.
Okay, so they'll allow your own home, either you leave that home on vacation, you can rent it out, or you actually let somebody sleep in one of the rooms in your house.
Correct. And that kind of begs the question of, does the consumer actually want to travel that way, right? Because from what we can see, we don't have, I would say that the consumer doesn't want to travel that way.
Well,
that
does the host want to host that way either?
And
right?
that's a great rebuttal too, is when you host your primary residence, you are exposed to things like theft of personal items, and Airbnb doesn't cover like cash, art collectibles, sentimental values. And then there's also the potential of domestic abuse that could happen in your unit, or assault. There's a lot of different aspects that I think they've kind of forgotten that primary suite doesn't necessarily mean that it's a safer suite.
Okay. And so that idea of having an in-law suite of sorts or a secondary dwelling in the basement, that's still not decided yet, but you think that might go either way?
Yeah, I'm not. That's the one I'm kind of wishy-washy of whether that will be passed through. Kind of like a coach house. I don't know if that, or a tiny home on a property, whether that would be passed through or not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And as far as different parts of the city, if we talk about the suburbs versus downtown zoning, can you touch on that briefly? Which zoning may allow Airbnbs, which may not?
Yeah, and I mean, these are all assumptions. I don't know until that report is fully put out. My assumption would be anything in hotel zoning would probably still be allowed. I just don't know mixed use if that would be allowed. I'm just not 100% sure on that side. My assumption is that hotel zoning would be allowed on that side, which I think is fair on that. Where I think it becomes harder is, let's say you had like a Nepean home or a Barrhaven home that you rented on Airbnb as an investment, whether that would be allowed or not at this point.
Okay. And I know you're really big on screening, like these, maybe you can touch on that, the party houses that happen. Is that a result of poor screening? Is that, like, what do you look for when you are renting your units out? Like, what are the red flags? I guess that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of lack of knowledge in the community of how to properly screen, and also Airbnb does have some onus as well. So a good example is Airbnb has a part where you can put in a security deposit, but they actually don't put a hold on your credit card. So there's really no repercussions per se. Maybe you would get deleted off the platform, maybe you wouldn't. So I do believe that Airbnb does have some onus on that side. Other booking platforms have done that well, I'd say, where they collect the security deposit just like a hotel. And then there's the host education. I think, just like yourself and the training that your brokerage provides, I think Airbnb hosts need that kind of training as well, of how to effectively screen, what to look for in terms of risk factors. Even fire marshal, bylaw, human trafficking, all those sort of things need to be kind of an education course or crash course for someone that's coming onto the platform in order for it to be safe.
Okay.
For us, when we screen, we're looking obviously at star reviews. We're looking how much that person has traveled and according to their reviews. Because let's say they've traveled a bunch in October, that's usually a red flag. You wouldn't jump from Airbnb to Airbnb in the same city. And then we're looking at trends as well. So you start to see, because the platform is, or our portfolio is a little bit larger, you start to see trends that are happening in the industry as well.
Okay. So I saw an interesting post that you had put up where you said, would you rent to this person, right? And I think one was a 4.5 star review, which in theory sounds pretty good. But you said maybe as far as Airbnb guest goes, that's not a great number.
Yeah, so a good risk factor that we look for is the person from your local town. So example, are they from Ottawa? And the reason being is, to be quite honest, in our experience at least, Ottawa guests tend to be the worst guests, because if they're partying, like you have a home.
Ottawa, we're such nice people in Ottawa.
I know. It's not that. It's more of just, if you have a home and you're going to party in someone else's home, like, you have a home, go to your home and party there, right? Don't party in my home. So that makes that risk factor a little bit higher. That if you're from the same town, why do you need accommodations, let's say? And so that makes it a little bit harder on that side.
Okay.
So in terms of that 4.5 rating, most Airbnb guests, I would say, have a 5-star rating. Hosts are pretty generous in their reviews, mostly to encourage people to come onto the platform. And I think they're very forgiving of some situations. Like a good example is like dirty dishes or that kind of stuff being put into the sink without being washed. A lot of hosts would let that go on that side. So that's why I think a 4.5 rating for an Airbnb guest isn't that strong of a rating.
Okay. So obviously, education experience is huge in this. Any other final thoughts or comments that you would have for anybody thinking of maybe putting another property up for Airbnb?
Yeah, I would just say it's knowledge of the community. I would really encourage you to either seek an expert on that side, a property management company, and I think it's just knowledge in general of the community. I would encourage the city at this point to get more concrete data, and I think that's what's missing in the industry is we don't have that concrete data to present because it is a relatively new and evolving industry. Where like we can see all of your stats for like September, October, where Airbnb doesn't necessarily have that, so we don't actually know how many problem properties there are, right? Are we just talking about 4 or 10 problem properties, or are we talking about 50 at that side? And then I would even say it's hard to even know how many Airbnbs are on the platform right now, because they come and they go. You find long-term tenants, short-term tenants, whatever it may be, and they kind of come and go on that side. So I think honestly it's just a crash course in education and finding out more data and more information that will make this community stronger.
Okay, great. And I know you're running a bit of a education campaign, and I think you've got some surveys to fill out.
The petition there.
Petition,
yeah.
Thank you, that's the word. Do you want to talk about that? And if you are interested, if you are sort of pro Airbnb, where should they visit?
Yeah, so it's called Let's Share Ottawa. It's essentially making Airbnbs accessible to everyone. And we do believe in fair regulation for sure. And what for us fair regulation looks like is mostly the safety and security of the property, but also the safety and the security of the guests too, which is paramount as well. So most of the security discusses primary, secondary suite kind of regulations that are coming into place, the MAT tax, of your occupancy tax, which is 4%. Here in Ottawa. So for sure, Let's Share Ottawa. There's a petition there that you can help sign. I think we're close to 3,000 signatures now, which is awesome. I'm really excited to see that. And hopefully that will help us when we go to City Hall on November 15th to present.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I think that was very educational. Hopefully that helped you out. If you have any questions, let me know, and I can pass them on to Jen, or you can check her out. What's the Instagram and what's the website? Short and Sweet BnB on Instagram, and then if you're looking for consulting, it's Jen and Jerry. Jen and Jerry. Great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.